workshop. The first of many, because we've got quite a few things to get through in a not too long a period of time. But I'll pass to Jo to introduce.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to indicate, after the last term long-term plan process, some of you may remember that we had some feedback sessions and we got some great information of how Council would like to see the long-term plan progress in future. That feedback was taken back and discussed and planned, and so we are planning this next long-term plan in a project methodology manner, which is going extremely well, and we're seeing significant involvement across Council. So this will very, very much be a team approach. But what is important is the elected members being part of that journey. So there will be lots of questions to be asking of the elected members and lots of involvement at different points along the way. But as we work through the slides today, we really want you to be thinking about what you'd like to see, what you would like to see happen, and if there is anything missing, because this is a continuous improvement process. As we move in new ways of working, we want to make sure that we are hitting those right points for Council to be involved. So I just want to acknowledge Mandy and Scott today, who will be presenting, but also Craig from the Project Management Office, who has done a phenomenal job being involved with Mandy and planning these processes. So the structure that we will be moving forward in is a structure that we want to make sure that we can take consideration and learning from and continue to improve every step that we take. So with that, I'll hand over to the team.
Thanks everyone for your time today. We're just going to run through the slides. I apologise that I won't take up the full hour and 45 minutes that was allocated. I think I might be at best half an hour and Scott might be
15 to 20?
Yeah, so apologies that we may actually wrap this up earlier than anticipated, but it's important to give you all back your precious time when you can get it. So Alison's going to support me on the slides, and I'm not going to read through all of the slides. I'll just do some high levels because basically, we'll go to slide 1. Go on. Okay, so the current status of where we're at with the long-term plan, we've obviously got our project team sorted. We've basically drafted the environmental scan, which is essentially what we'll be talking about here today, and the strategic framework is progressing with yourselves, and I believe that's set for the agenda in September. And that's a really key foundational piece that helps structure the rest of the work forward on the long-term plan, and a lot of the pieces are dependent on what that story that we tell. We have some of the AMPs are being underway now, and they'll help inform the infrastructure strategy and financial strategies. We've also got the significant forecasting assumptions are drafted, and they change, albeit daily at the moment, to be fair. We've got the infrastructure strategy is also in draft. The DC policy review is ready to bring some of that piece of work to you all next week. It wasn't on the agenda, but because the 1st of September has been cancelled, we need to bring that discussion forward. And there's other components that we're all working on now, including groups of activity discussions and other things. So there's a lot of balls in the air moving forward in the background so that we can bring it to you all at that right point. As you can see, I think earlier in discussions in May when I did the workshop, or it might have been a later one, we have gone through the different phases of the LTP with you all. So we're currently sitting across the phases 1 to 3. There's sort of a fairly fluid stages of those, so we're not sort of just in phase 1, we're working in a couple of those phases right now. Largely phase 1 is complete, sitting heavily into phase 2 with some breach into phase 3. We do think forward a little bit. We can change slides, Alison. So as we've got here, we've got some more workshops coming up. We've had the one here in May. We had the Waihima Community Board, I think it was the 1st of August. We've got this one today. We've got one next week. That's going to be significant forecasting assumptions, and we'll also incorporate DC policy discussion into that one as well. Then we've got the Ahuriri Community Board on the 31st. The 1st of September, that one has now been shifted, which is why we're bringing the DC forward. That was going to be predominantly around the DC policy and significant engagement policy. Significant engagement will push back a wee bit. The 15th of September council meeting, and that will be where you, all going well, will be looking at the strategic framework and adopting that for the framework to push forward. 21st September Youth Council, 22nd of September Strategy and Advocacy Committee, and then 29th September is the council workshop. That's just looking at the next month. We have a program further out beyond that, but that's just giving an idea of what we've got going forward in the next 4 weeks. On top of that, there are also conversations at PAR around the service reviews for each of the different activities coming through on a weekly basis as well. So that's feeding into their long-term plan from a side view approach. So yeah, we'll be working together closely on those. So if we move to the next slide, thank you, Alison. So just a bit of an introduction to the environmental scan. Basically, it's taking into account everything from inside, outside, global, just taking a look at this. Basically, it's a holding place of where we started our long-term plan journey. So what we're wanting to do with our environmental scan is take this stick in the sand moment, because so much will change from here to when we adopt in June. I think for those of you that were here in the last long-term plan, when we started doing the long-term plan and for the 24-34, and we had a theme set out that seemed to be quite a nice, happy, get fit for the future kind of, and comedy kind of, cartoony, nice and light. That feel 12 months on, when we had the amendment to defer it, was a totally different story that supported that long-term plan as we went through the waters change and all those activities. Here we are with waters about to transition out in the next 12 months, and then we've got a reform on top of it. We don't know how that's going to shape. The story that we start with is going to look very different to 12 months' time when we reach that point. So what we want to do is start to build our Let's Talk platform with a link from our Waitaki District Council website, start to build our RTP 2737 platform now, or after this, once I've got your approval on the environmental scan story sort of thing. So we can sort of give a bit of a, this is where we've come from, this is our story now. And then as we have major updates along the way, we'll just sort of go, update. The reform's now pushed to this point. You know, we know where we're at with that. We've put a submission in to go with this party, or whatever that looks like. Big changes, we'll just put an update, but we don't change that story, because this is where we started. It's going to be sort of a date. This is a solid, this is how we were now. The significant forecasting assumptions, they change as we go through, and we'll talk about those next week more. But the significant forecasting assumptions, they change as we go through, but before audit starts in February, we have to have said that is our point, that we are signing that's what we're sticking to for the rest of our long-term plan. If we say we're going to forecast at a high population growth, then that's what we have to say. We can't change our mind after that, because that sets the view thereafter. So the environmental scan, as I said, it's a story setter, and it pulls together everything that influences who we are as a community, what we do for the next 10 years, who we are as council and officers, and what we do going forward. So as we've said here, it makes sure our long-term plan comes for what's coming, not just what's already on our desk. It takes into account those global factors. And I did receive yesterday from our insurance broker a somewhat depressing read on the global view of, or actually of the national view of impacting for council, local government activity, with the reforms and everything else. So I might, I've shared it with Ken, he might bring that to PAR in the next coming weeks, of the reality of those impacting and the risks where they sit. So it's a really dynamic time that we're in for this long-term plan. So just seeing on the notes that I put on it. As I was saying, as far as building this onto the website, we'd put the highlighting points on, and then we'd have a link to the full document in between and behind that, so that people can read that full environmental scan if they've got interest in seeing where we started our story as we go through this. If you want to go to the next slide, Alison, please.
Just a question
Yes.
on that, Mandy. How do we feed in and sort of see that and play a part in setting what the environmental scan looks like?
So that's what this discussion is here today. So basically, if there's something that's missing in the environmental scan, so I'm not going to read through each of these slides. You've seen the environmental scan was in the documents there, and I trust you've all read that, which is the fuller story. This is just the highlights, or the AI version taken out from the highlights. So if you've got anything that you think is missing that should be incorporated into that environmental scan, please let me know. Just either raise it here or send me an email, and we can make those changes and incorporate that in, because this is the snip of where we all started our journey, not just where the team that's working on the RTP did. This is where we've all started our journey, taking into account factors, council, national, regional, international, global, so by all means, that's why I just wanted to go through it all at a very high level, and if there's anything that you feel is questionable or needs added into, or amended along the way, or if there's something that punches out and you go, actually, that's now changed that dynamic quite significantly, we can do an update to the site on that website. So if we look at the next slide, Alison. Yeah, so I'm wasn't planning on reading on all of these, but just I'll just pause on each slide. So one of the areas being climate and cost pressures converging, obviously, your weather, the rising costs, insurance, material access and cost of materials, construction costs, and global trade risk. That's a big factor externally. If anyone's got anything that concerns them on that or add to?
Just under the rising construction costs, I guess that's adding further pressure on rates. I think the rates affordability is a different bullet point in itself, which is basically the high cost of living for our community is creating pressure on rates affordability. So there's sort of two different ideas there. One is the rising construction costs, so what we're seeing, and the other one is our ability for our community to pay.
I'm just seeing if we've got a rates. So, okay, rates, affordability.
Any other questions or comments on that one, councillors?
Okay, cool. I've noted that, and we'll add something in to address that because definitely it's relevant. So the next big topic that's come through is the trust, technology, and workforce pressures are rising too. So obviously declining trust in institutions, more contested public engagement on rates, planning, climate decisions, rising cyber attacks, fraud and digital misinformation risk. And that's actually been identified in the report that we just received yesterday from Aon, saying that that is one of the major risks out there is AI, disinformation and mistruth being created, and risk of cyber attack through that area significantly increasing. Growing pressure to modernise digital services and ageing populations and workforce shortages, difficulty filling skilled and specialist roles. That to me is probably one that's a little bit separate, the filling skilled roles and specialist roles, particularly as we go through reform. That's going to be a transitional point where people will be coming and going. But any other comments, thoughts, anything missing on that one? Terry's got a smile. Councillor Hogan. Your comments are 100% right regarding there's a lot of doom and gloom that sets the... but with doom and gloom, you know, with every... dare I sound like a bit like Pollyanna, but with every environment, no matter how negative, there is positive. We have to look for whatever opportunity there is out there. Unfortunately, where we take the snip from, it isn't that great. And as I said, I can share you some bad news that received yesterday from Aon, and I'm sure that will come to the Park Committee through the risk discussions. We are filled right now at this time with significant risks in all areas of local government, and obviously, as you can see there, internationally and globally. But we'll find the good news. We'll bring the good news, Councillor Hogan. Any other comments to that one?
Just a couple of things just to consider in all of this, not necessarily this slide, but what I'm experiencing at the moment from people coming out of my work is basically, you've already mentioned the declining trust, but I'll put a word here that you might want to think about is dissatisfaction, which is, you know, really growing. The other thing is expectation. The penny that I get, even after a certain discussion yesterday, one of my constituents is the expectation is still there to receive certain things from council, which we no longer have the ability to provide. I'm not probably telling the story correctly, but I think you get the gist.
Thank you, Councillor Shack. Just wanted to confirm the dissatisfaction is from the community towards council. Right, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, just capturing that. Did you?
No, I think that's all we've got around the table on that one.
So the next slide is obviously one of the biggest reform periods in decades. We've got the Systems Improvement Bill, the Local Water Done Well as we transition into Southern Waters from 1 July next year, the Head Start pathway with decisions expected this year on that, the RMA reform, and then the Building Act and infrastructure funding changes which will impact faster consents, and I just saw a release on earthquake-prone building changes as well that are coming up, and development levies replacing development contributions. So there's a lot that is approaching. As far as development levies go, that will come in the term of this LTP, but we don't change at the start of the LTP, so that's more discussion for excitement next week. But yeah, so any questions on that one at all, or thoughts?
First thing I was sort of thinking, it depends on how you are setting out this final document and things, because just picking up on Jeremy's point about it all being quite doom and gloom, this is also a really fantastic opportunity ahead of us for us to have an opportunity to redesign a local government system that works for our community. So I just feel like when we're talking about a whole lot of things that are sitting in the negative, if there is any framing we're putting around any of these bullet points when it comes to the document, I don't think it needs to be all negative. I think we can actually talk about the opportunity ahead of our community, and it might actually be the element of positive that we are looking for. Franz?
Yeah, if we're putting it there in bullet points, I think another bullet point you possibly should add there, particularly what is in the news in the last week or two, is electoral reform, which I definitely think once we get to the Head Start and amalgamation is definitely something that needs some serious consideration.
So the document, the full document is attached at the back. I'm not sure if you've all seen that. It was in the workshop papers. So it's been drafted as a more full and complete story to what's here and in the slides. But to what I'm hearing, and there'd be a couple of ways, and I'll have to think about it. Laura's done a lot of the work on this, and unfortunately Laura finishes at the end of next week. But I will talk to Laura, because she's done some excellent work, to see whether we can maybe even, as we build the website, whether we highlight the negatives, the reality checks, the environmental scan reality checks that are there, not necessarily the negatives, the reality points where we're starting from, but also say, this is an opportunity for us all, and these are the opportunities that we see for Waitaki as a district for our long-term plan. These are what we can address as we go through this. So that might be something that says, yeah, this is our picture, this is where we start our stick in the sand, but here is our opportunity. So I'll look at that and talk to Laura about that, how we can structure that a little bit.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I think I'd be framing those as challenges, challenges and opportunities, because what that does is it actually focuses the mind from saying, okay, this is what we're dealing with and this is what we can be dealing with. And I think Franz is 100% right with regards to the way that this is an opportunity for us to shape the way of the future, because it's effectively like taking a jigsaw and throwing it up in the air. We're going to have to put the thing back together again. We also have the opportunity to decide what the picture looks like on the front.
So then we've just got that there's a tighter economic backdrop for this LTP, inflation above the Reserve Bank's target range, OCR rising, construction costs up 27 to 40%, contractor rates up 15 to 20% due to shortages, possible rates caps going forward, new mandatory reporting requirements ahead, water services now sit outside our long-term plan for council. Any other thoughts, comments, anything missing? So the next slide is about Waitaki as regional context. Waitaki is recovering, but we've got constraints. So their GDP grew 2.3% in 25 against the 0.4% nationally. Growth driven by agriculture, tourism and mining as our predominant areas. Household incomes sit 24% below the national average. Building consents down 18% against gains in Otago and New Zealand overall. Aged roading, water and wastewater assets. Skills gap, And Waitaki spans the 2 regional council boundaries, adding governance complexity, particularly as we go forward. So any other thoughts? Comment?
Just the one thing I wonder, it's back a page, I'm sorry, on the tighter economic backdrop, is around, I'm just trying to work out how we put this as such, but I feel like we need to highlight the need in this long-term plan period to set up the way our all our entities work for amalgamation. So it's kind of that, while we say that water services now sit outside the main body of the LTP, we also need to be preparing ourselves financially as a community as well as another number of senses for amalgamation. So I haven't quite worded that right, but do you get what I'm sort of getting to?
Yep, 100%. And with that, one of the things that we will be talking to next week is part of the streamline into the amalgamation is the DIA has mandated groups of activities going forward. So whereas we've been presenting them in the last LTP by directorate, there was only 3 or 4 mandated activity groups: water, wastewater, stormwater and roading, and then floodwater, which we didn't control, were the mandated activities in the last LTP. With water, wastewater, stormwater and roading going, there's now 8 new areas that are mandated, so that will be how we'll present, but that's also another exciting topic for next week. But that streamlining of groups of activities by the DIA is so that when the amalgamation occurs, that we can start not only just benchmarking against other councils a little bit better, but actually, you know, we've got consistency in that approach going forward, so we know that that is the activities that we all going to be wearing our hats on. So yeah, that's a big change that's just come through. Yeah, so I'll bring that next week.
Sven, then Hannah, then France.
Yeah, that new way to frame things looked really good. I think it'll be a lot easier for the public to understand as well. My question on that one there with aged roading, water, wastewater assets nearing the end of the life. I wonder if we separate out the roading into its own bullet point, given that that's still within our control and we've still got the opportunity to learn from our mistakes with the water, which is therefore no longer within our control.
Hannah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I get the theme that's running through, you know, like around the restraint and the recovery and all of that, but I'm just mindful that it almost represents the energy of our organisation, and that there is still an opportunity, you know, like there, even if it's small, but you've got to create those opportunities, and I think that's where Mel was coming from with the amalgamation piece, is that broader kind of piece. What is the kind of opportunity there? Don't sell ourselves short, is what I'm saying. It's good to have the reality check, and this is where things are at now, but if it's long-term plan, then long-term vision, long-term aspiration, long-term future. What do we want for the community? So just be mindful of the balance. Otherwise, we cut ourselves at the knees and we miss those amalgamation piece opportunities. That's all.
Thank you, Hannah. France.
No, I mean, just picking up what you just said, then that bit of information is going to come to us next week or in the near future about those 8, what do you call it? Yeah, that DIA has stored up and brought, that might give us a bit more of an insight where they are thinking in terms of Head Start and all that sort of thing. So just looking forward to that.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Councillor Hannah, as well. And yeah, I think because the environmental scan is a picture, I think, you know, we'll talk to Laura about it though, whether we can incorporate more the opportunity into that bigger story or whether it just be a placeholder at the front, because I think that it's, for our website, I think it is important to acknowledge, you know, as Dan said, challenges and opportunities. Challenge is just an opportunity waiting to be exploited, basically. So, yeah, and to build that into what it can look like with the reality of what we can do in a new look for council, you know, going forwards. Yeah.
And this one here too, was just having a chat to Joe, that one thing we have got missing in there is around educational opportunities. So I wonder whether something like growth opportunities in the educational space or something along those lines. So we're just highlighting the fact that there is an opportunity for us there, and it's also something we're recognising that is potentially not there as much as it could be at the moment.
Sorry, was that broker opportunities in education? Broker?
Growth opportunities
Growth,
in the educational
sorry,
space. It may not be wordsmithed right, just probably massage that somewhat.
No, perfect.
France.
Mandy, just on skills gap, skills gap, it nearly requires a definition for what do you mean with high skilled jobs, because we are mainly an agriculture district, and yeah, how do I put this without offending anybody? Let's put it this way. If you mean, or it is meant, I should say, by high skilled jobs from a educational point of view, yeah, I can see a shortage coming up where these people might go to Australia or wherever they are, but are they necessarily the ones that we need for our district, if you know what I mean? Because we need people that can handle cattle and livestock, etc., etc. So, yeah, it's nearly, there is a negative point there, but should the negative point be made? Because does the national average actually applies to our district? Am I making sense?
100%. And you know, is it that there's actually a shortage of skilled workers for any role? You know, irrelevant of what that complexity of that role is, you know, because are we managing to get the people here is the bigger question. So we'll get some definition around that higher skill claim and see whether it is actually just around, you know, attracting people to Waitaki. You know, that's a bigger question in itself. So it may go into that in that report, but yeah.
I think there's two things in that. One of it is the inability to extract the skills we need, but it's also the retaining or actually getting high skilled or high paying. So, and they're not always the same thing, but high paying or high skilled jobs available within the Waitaki. Like quite a few of the times you might have some people on the ground that may not be seen in whatever the counter is. There'll be a national understanding of what that terminology means. But whatever that looks like, there'll be a number of jobs where the management is sitting outside of Waitaki, for instance, but the lower skills workers, or probably the lower paid workers, are operating locally. So it's kind of are we attracting the higher paid, higher skilled roles?
Sorry, my secretary wasn't keeping up with the words. Okay, so the next slide. Oh, thanks, Alison. So just that we have an ageing, more diverse Waitaki. Population's growing and ageing, 24.4% over 65. More ethnically diverse by 2034. Housing stays comparatively affordable. Low incomes remain the limiting factor. Strong on civic engagement, health and housing, and below national average on income, jobs, skills, and social connections. So,
I wonder, and I might be wrong in thinking this, because I did think that some of our younger populations have got bigger, maybe not in the percentage wise. I just wonder if there's anything in that, because I feel like we have a gap in the middle there, but I did understand us to have a few more younger ones coming through, which is has different necessities as well. So I'm just wondering whether, while the ageing population is our biggest one, if there is any change in the numbers at a lower level, just highlighting what they look like. There might not be. I might be wrong. Dan?
Yeah, I think further from what Mel's just said, one of the challenges there is actually identifying what their requirements are going to be in the medium to short term as well, medium to long term, because people are always going to look for opportunities depending on the stage of their life and where they're at, and if they don't see them here, they're going to see them somewhere else. The challenge that we have is actually that balance. And we have to actually develop a structure that works for everybody throughout, because without one sector we can't take care of another, and without the other sector we don't actually know fully where we're going. I mean, we know where the top end, the older population, is going. It's increasing, but increasing to a finite point. So I think this is actually our biggest challenge at this stage.
So I think, was there anything else on that side? No. Next slide, just that climate change is already here. Obviously, we're experiencing longer droughts, heavier rains, and faster coastal erosion. We have a number of assets already at risk. Water supply is becoming less predictable, and waterway quality is declining. So, yeah, that's pretty much the highlights of that area. There's a lot more in there.
I wonder whether we outline there, I guess it's kind of in the adding pressure on infrastructure, but it's lined up with the waterway quality declining. That one sort of didn't stand out for me as quite being clear on what we were trying to say. Like, I feel like we've just seen in the weather events how much it has an effect on the wider population and not just us, but a lot of it's sort of our assets that are just not built to deal with what they're having to deal with right now. So if we can just kind of tease that out a wee bit. It's not necessarily that our waterway quality is declining, it may be as well, but it's to do with the increased weather events that it wasn't actually built to deal with. So I think it's just being a bit clearer on what that means. Sven?
Yeah, I'll concur with that. It's, these are inherently sort of generalisations, but the true picture and the water quality is mixed. It's about 50-50 between improving and declining, depending which measures you're looking at and depending which waterway you're looking at. So I think it's probably too mixed to go in as a generalisation. And the longer droughts, I'd actually, I think that's the expectation from climate change rather than what's already happening. I think we've actually had less droughts probably in the last 10 years compared to the last 30. So maybe if that's the expectation, it could be labelled as such, whereas there it looks like it's a report rather than a forecast.
Maybe we need to line that up with wherever we get that information, just to check out if there is sort of a, I don't know, NIWA report that we respond to that tells us one or the other. Then that's probably where we look to for it. France?
Can't get my head around that last bullet point. First of all, waterway quality declining, I'm not quite sure. I can't relate that to actual climate change, but further on after the comma, adding pressure on infrastructure, I just can't see the relationship between the first part and the second part of that bullet.
I'll go back through all these slides and just make sure, take into account your feedback and go through and make sure that they're actually picking up the right points, the data behind it supports those points, and then, yeah, and before it goes anywhere. Because behind in the full report, there's a lot more information. This is just gleaned the top comments, so, yeah.
Cool. Dan?
Just with regards to that waterway, are we talking water race quality? Is that what we're referring to as the waterway?
I really don't know. This was done from the magic of AI on top of the report that Laura did. Laura didn't AI it. Laura did it by human work, but Craig prepared these slides very quickly last week through AI over the report.
I look forward to seeing the reference to the sidewalk.
I think Mr. Hope has something to add.
What I think the point was trying to make was that the lower the source water quality that we're receiving into our infrastructure, the more difficult it is to treat it and get it to a drinking water standard. So it's like, yeah, if the source water is declining, then we need to do more to mitigate the impacts of it.
Dutch Virgo here, waterway should say water supply. Thank you.
And I think what that does as well is then just puts maybe another bullet point needing there, which again, it might not feed into your actual report, but just around the ability for our systems to handle the new version of sort of water events. Good, yeah.
And then the last slide that I've got, oh no, not quite. Next slide, Alison. Yeah, the core tension for this LTP, rising costs and infrastructure needs a meeting constraint affordability. Our economic strengths depend on volatile global markets. Deferring renewal cuts costs now but raises risk and costs later, and that trade-off will shape every decision in this LTP. Some of the big tensions, but there's a lot of big tensions for this LTP, which we've been through. Yeah, any other thoughts and comments to that slide?
Yeah, when you read that first one a few times, you get it, but it's but again, it's probably just a feed through from whatever you've got in a longer version.
So I guess if we go to the next slide, yeah, okay. I've got more writing on. Oh, yeah, there we go. I was going to say I've got more writing on my So yeah, I guess the thing is with those highlighted ones, I'll go through and check those key slides because that would maybe what we'd put on the front face of the Let's Talk of the website platform as our stick in the sand. This is where we started kind of narration at a very high level with a link to that full document. So I'll go through and make sure that those statements are correct and adding in what you've said, and then work with Jason, Lily, to get a platform built, and on that same website would show, you know, the timeline of our long-term plan and the phases, but that would probably be about it at this stage. We'll add more as we go through that program. But I guess, is there anything else that you'd like to see here? Is there anything that you see isn't captured? And thank you for what you've shared already, Franz, as well. But if there's anything else that's missing, by all means, if you haven't had a chance to read that fuller document, feel free to send me an email later when you think of it might enlighten some other ideas or thoughts. So happy to make those changes and bring anything else in. As said, it's a stick in the sand from where we started, but I do think it's a good opportunity to highlight those opportunities and things. So once we've got some things drafted up, we'll share that website and we can keep on, been talking to Jason, he said we can keep on just building onto that website. It's kind of a live thing that we'll just keep updating. So if opportunities come to light as well, we can add those in. So as we shape through our year as well. So yeah, but if there's any other thoughts, comments.
I think for me, just on that page 13 in the social context, just adding a bit more around the value of stronger Waitaki. I think just incorporating some of the community development opportunities there.
It might sit mainly in the reform sort of space, but just the EOC or our functions and requirements looking forward in the emergency sort of space, because that's going to be a big cost factor moving forward for us. And also I guess the reform, just on the flip side of that, there is also going to have implications on that. So I think we need to just keep highlighting that those changes in themselves, like when we talk about reform, we're also talking about taking water out, which is mentioned somewhere else, but just making sure through that we're talking about how many different shifting views of local government or Waitaki District Council we're going to see in the next wee while, and the effect that has on your workforce and ability to plan for future and all that sort of stuff. So I've been through all these slides, but I hadn't gone through the in-depth document at the other end of things, so we'll have a good read through that. But I think there's a wee bit of a dot from these slides that just tell me all this is going on, but so much is going to change that we recognise that this stake in the sand when it comes to what our environment's looking like at the moment for moving into long-term plan, what comes out the other end is going to potentially look really different. And we need to highlight that, because when it is really different and our community says, but hey, you said, over the next 10 years you're going to do this, we've got to make sure it's really clear that we don't know what the next 10 years entail, and we're doing our best guess at the moment based on our current status with the whole lot up in the air. Rebecca.
Thank you. I guess just sort of wanted to follow up on the comments earlier made about the framing, and yep, it's a reality check, but it's not sort of the destination. But I just wonder whether there's an opportunity as well to build in through some of that, like the efficiency or the work that is going to be happening through PAR, to talk about, like building a better council and finding those efficiencies, because at the moment it's all sort of very, these are the external factors, but like this is also kind of what we're doing as well to challenge ourselves. I don't know if that's appropriate to put that in there, but I just feel like that's probably missing. Yeah.
Do we have anywhere in it where we do recognise some of the really big things that we have done over the last little while? Like I know when we're sort of looking at a snapshot now, we've just had an event centre, which is one of the biggest projects, is the biggest project we've ever done, and just the opportunities with some of those, Forrester Gallery, that kind of thing.
We haven't mentioned anything specific that we've delivered as council. It's more...
I'll get you to put your mic on. Sorry.
Sorry about that. We haven't identified projects that we've delivered specifically by council. The environmental scans capturing the environment that we are moving into, rather than projects that we've done per se. It's saying this is our time, this is what we recognise, and we're trying to plan for the next 10 years as we move through this environment. But somehow I could probably incorporate a bit more around that, in the right places. I think we can I think also to Rebecca's point there, where you're talking about those power workshops and looking for opportunities and efficiencies, it's, recognising as well, we've done some big things, last year potentially, and how we can, look for bigger future, not saying bigger projects, but just, what does the future hold for us when we take into account, where we're at, where we've come from, and showing that we can do some great things, and we have done, and what does, those opportunities that now present themselves to the community from what's been invested into Waitaki as well.
Because there's almost a conversation too around things like your event centre and Forrester Gallery, around how we commercialise or how we best utilise spaces, which offers some, the more spaces are used, the less we have to prop them up, essentially. So there's a wee bit of an environmental scan this is what we've got, is an opportunity in front of us to capitalise on, if you will.
And I guess that's where I could also mention the commercial strategy that's in development as well, and linking those sorts of conversations, and also not with the Waitaki Event Centre and other facilities such as the extension of the Forrester Gallery. It's also what they bring for opportunity for, future generations and other sideways opportunities there too. So, yeah, okay. No, thank you for that.
Sven, then Dan, then Franz.
I'll jump on my usual hobby horse. The aquatic centre's another one that will need to be considered. I think we've got a few assets out there that the end of life is not being planned for, and so that is something I'd like to see in the environmental scan for the LTP, whether it's through the traditional methods of depreciation or some other method, I don't know, but it'd be worth considering, because I think also the event centre, now's a good time to start doing that at the start of its life, so the annual impost of planning for its end of life is minimal.
Dan.
Yeah, I do think it's important to actually highlight and signify the wins that we have made, because that's actually those assets now at a start point in their life, which means that they don't have to be replaced. And I think it also highlights the significance of actually doing those, because when we're looking at other assets that need replacement, it alleviates the pressure from those particular ones there, but it also indicates the amount of work that is needed to actually get something like of those scales across the line. And I think we've got to keep highlighting the fact that things cost real money, and the longer it's deferred, the more money it costs.
France.
I just wonder whether in this document it should be indicated a change in direction from raising revenue purely from rates to, as we already discussed, the commercial strategy, because after all that should affect the direction of the LTP as well. So it's not so much as in particularly going somewhere else for the revenue that we need, but a change in direction or a change of thinking.
So thank you everyone for your feedback, and I'll take that all on board. And now it is the joy of Scott. If there's any other questions before I pass on to Scott? No? But Paul, did you want to speak first? No? It's with you.
Joy Scott.
Awesome. So there was raised that it was challenging to access some of our resources and to do your jobs. So we thought we'd come together and create a page on our SharePoint infrastructure that allowed you to see what you need to do your jobs and become more efficient in that space. So I'll share and run through what we've got so far. It's still a work in progress. So we're looking for feedback and anything on any ideas that you may have as well. So this is what we've pulled together so far with a bit of feedback from the previous LTP feedback as well as a couple of councillors. So it summarises how you would operate as an elected member. It is separate from Docs on Tap, a bit more interactive, but Docs on Tap would still be the source of truth for meeting agendas, minutes, and all of those sort of documents that you get driven. This is more just a way to help you navigate those pages as well as other things that you have. So you can see at the top of the page, there'll be some financial and performance reporting that will come from Richard's team when that is ready. There'll be a big link to the long-term plan, which I'll dive into a little bit more. There'll be something around capital projects. That one is still to be defined on how we do that. But also links to things like resident surveys or things that interest you guys and things that affect how you make decisions. It also has a whole bunch of quick links on the right-hand side here to go to Docs on Tap, the learning platform, code of conducts, governance structures, long-term and annual plans, all the organisational charts, standing orders, travel claim forms, and watching meetings, and all of those fun things. We also have on here quick links to go to directly to Docs on Tap, so you can click on those and it will take you straight into that. We also have the YouTube channel for council, which will have all of our previous meetings and things like that in it. We've also got this AI bot here, which will go through the 2026 meetings and minutes and agendas and decisions and everything that happened within those that you can ask questions. So if you wanted to know decision around why we came to a 16.9% rates increase, it would give you the meeting that happened in, the report it happened in, and the answer, or summarise an answer for you. So you could use that to give a guidance of which meeting, which paper you needed to go back to check on when those decisions and things were made and talked about. It is a one chat sort of thing, so you can send one message, one prompt to it, and it'll return back a response. This is sort of developed this way to stop you driving an answer for it and it giving false information. So it's very, very factual, this one. You also get the latest meeting that has been live streamed there, but you can also go back and look at previous meetings from there. There's also the entire decisions register within here, so you can do all the filters and that as you normally would, bringing all this sort of stuff together. So hopefully that helps drive some of it, make it a bit easier to navigate. Also, I forgot to mention, this would replace your home page on your computer. So at the moment, I think you get a permission denied, which isn't a very welcoming way to come into council. So we would change this to be your home page, so you've got a nice portal into council. It'll also work on your personal laptops and things like that, but you would need to go to the link directly rather than us setting it as your homepage. If we look at the long-term plan, done a little bit of work in here, which has some of the early calendar concept that we've got. So these dates may change, some of the wording may change within this and the action points, but it gives you an idea of where we are in the process, what's coming up next, and all of those fun things. So that goes through all the phases, which were listed inside the presentation earlier. It also has guidance around what the long-term plan is, the 6 phases at a glance, what they are, and all of your responsibilities within that. So Craig's put a decent amount of work into getting the content for this, so it should help drive all of the different changes and challenges that you'll face in these areas as well, and summarise what you're looking at. So we're hoping to do this for a whole bunch of different activities that you have as well, just to help drive so you guys know what is required of you and make sure you can get the information as you need it and when you need it without having to fight for it. We're hoping to release this in an early concept in the next couple of weeks, which should help you, and then we can get your feedback and make changes as we do. So continuous improvement sort of philosophy on this, where it's not a set once and done, but we'll keep on updating it. Any questions or comments? Rebecca?
Oh, this looks fantastic. I was just laughing at the AI. Can you explain this in plain English? Because I feel like we should be doing everything that we do should be we should be taking a plain English approach. That's not a you thing. Is there any way that we can, based on I guess our feedback on this, incorporate this into a public sense? Like not obviously all of the information, but just looking at this makes me go, whoa, if we're wanting to be able, people to be able to understand the long-term plan council processes, like this is kind of what I would love for us to see. I don't know, it's probably getting ahead of myself, but yeah.
You mean the page or the AI component to it?
The elect members hub in general. Yeah.
That will be part of comms and how they deliver it. How we structure it will be something that we can work with them on. Would be slightly different. So this is based on SharePoint, so we've got a lot of integration that we can do. SharePoint's usually a bit more static. We need a bit more control of it, whereas this is linking to a lot of live documents. So there will be things that we can do that improve, and if there's specific things that you're seeing in here that you think the public would really get value out of, it's definitely something we can look at.
Dan?
Thanks, Scott. Looks really, really good. I may have missed something because I'm deaf in this ear at the moment. But with regards to the financial performance, what kind of information is going to be available on that, and to what detail?
I'll defer this one to Richard.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Councillor. We're working on that at the moment, liaising with Franz, Sven and Brent to come up with what that might look like. We've had a bit of a prototype pulled together, so it's tracking sort of key budgets and larger items like that. So I think after we've had a chance to progress it and do a bit of sanity checking, we'll then share it out more broadly for some feedback. But we just tested just recently that we could get the technology to do what we need it to do. So the first and biggest hurdle is done, and now we can actually get on with producing it.
Just want to say I think this will be a really massive help, and it's a lot more welcoming on a homepage for councillors. You could even have a welcome councillors. It's nice to have you here. But no, I really appreciate it, and I think that long-term plan and getting a really good understanding of what's coming up, so that if there are gaps or things that people are particularly worried about, we're actually starting to understand them earlier on the piece. And for those that haven't been through a long-term plan, which is thorny, and I think in the past we've just found out very close to the day they need to be approved that this is a document that's coming to us and so is this and so is this, and some of it we would have liked to have spent a little bit more time on. Time's still going to be an issue for us, but if we know what's coming down the tracks at us, I think it gives us more of a chance for those that have a genuine interest in certain areas that may not be coming through the, the general workshop kind of process, it gives them a chance for them potentially to see some information a bit earlier in the piece and to feed in, so we can basically get to a stage where we're not having a last minute, everyone's a bit panicked because we're feeling we're having to make decisions based on things that we haven't really delved into or asked questions we want to. But it also, I think, means for staff that with everything they've got going on, not enough time to get in front of councillors. It gives them the opportunity to put certain documents in front of councillors and identify if there's any looming issues that they should be aware of, rather than assuming that's going to go through and then not knowing that there's a wee thorny issue in there. So I think this does give us just a wee bit of a chance to be across things. I think we're still going to struggle somewhat because the timeframes are tight. We've stepped into the long-term space, planned space a little bit later than we would have liked to. So I still, we don't think, we can't do magic in this space, so it's not going to be perfection, but I think it's a great step in the right direction. And just around the public side of things, just noting that at the same time we are building up a long-term plan web page for people to land on, which will have a bit more information on it. So I think that there's a real opportunity in that for how much information we put out into the community, and just how much detail we do go into with that is something we probably need to just keep discussing. But thank you, team.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Yeah, just as Scott sort of invited, once it gets going, very keen for your feedback on it and how it's working for you. And I think it would be useful to sort of schedule in a session once you've been able to use it for a couple of months to come back and say, well, what's working, what's not, what else would you like to see? And I think picking up on Rebecca's point about things that you see and hear and you do think might be useful for the public, start raising those so we can think about ways of delivering that on a public website, which obviously won't be quite as interactive or as in-depth, but if you're finding it useful, then certainly some parts that the public might find, and so sort of build that into the ongoing review process to make sure that it is your page. This is a start, it's not the finish, and it really need to meet your needs, not sort of what we think your needs are. So we'll appreciate the feedback, but I think something structured so it's not, oh, Rebecca wants this and Dan wants this and Sven wants that. We've run out of space, which one do we choose? So I think we'll put something in place to make sure that we can have a discussion so it gets a good review and meets your needs.
And I think that's probably a fair point too, that just in that feedback loop, how do we circle back and make sure every one of us don't have officers running away, adding another little element, because I don't think that's great use of time. We probably need a wider consensus on, is this helpful or necessary? But so I guess it's that if you're hearing a whole lot of feedback and you're not sure if it's that's reasonable, we probably should put that on there. If it's a little bit in there, that's a lot of time, we need to think about whether that's actually going to be helpful. Throwing that back so we can find a bit of process around it would be cool. Perfect. Well, we'll finish up there. Thank you very much, team.